Hi, I'm Sheana Davis, the Epicurean Connection here in Sonoma, California, and we are hosting our weekly cheese chat. And today we have a fantastic guest, Amy Sherman, who is the editor at Cheese Professor, and we are looking forward to hearing how she established Cheese Professor, became the editor in the background, and she'll share with us her contributors and the articles and all things Cheese Professor. So welcome, Amy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're looking forward to having you share how Cheese Professor came about and who your contributors are and what the future lays with your upcoming articles. And so please do share how Cheese Professor was started.
Absolutely. So I was contacted by the publisher, who also has a sister site called Alcohol Professor, which he has run for about 10, 11 years, I guess. And he has an internet business, I think in internet security actually, and just had an interest in spirits, wine, beer, and launched this site and a competition. His approach to competitions is a little bit different from some of the other ones that are out there. He judges based on price, looks at categories with price. As we know, for competitions, sometimes there are products that get terrific scores or win gold medals, but are not really available or are priced in a stratosphere and not accessible for people. So, you know, it's all very interesting, but at the end of the day, maybe not as consumer focused. So he has an interest in cheese and decided he wanted to go down that path with cheese as well. Having a site that would be educational and accessible, and at the same time prepare for some competitions in the future that will be having people from the trade coming in and judging based on price. So obviously with the COVID-19, we are you know, delayed a bit. I think they're looking at 2021 for the competition, but the site is up and going.
Great. And we'll be sure to put both of those websites up on our link after we upload this video to YouTube and our website, so people can view both Cheese Professor and Alcohol Professor.
Yes.
So what are some of your latest contributions that you have added on to the website?
Well, I'm excited. This week we had a feature on the pecorinos of Italy. There are actually 8 different PDO pecorinos, and I've always found it somewhat confusing because you have Pecorino Romano, which you know, doesn't come from Rome. You have cheeses from Sardinia that say Sardi. It's a little bit complicated. So I'm really happy that we had that story, just kind of making sense of it all. We had a
which,
fun
by the way,
piece
was a great article.
Thanks. I thought it was a really good primer, a good thing to go back to from time to time when you're trying to kind of recall the differences and know which is which. We also had a story on summer cocktails and cheeses, and it was a little bit different from what I was expecting it to be, but I think it turned out really well. It was about really some of the spirits that pair so beautifully with cheese, and why something like gin, for example, that has all those herbal notes is such a good complement to cheese. So that was a fun piece, and that piece had recommendations from Tanaya Darlington, or Madame Fromage as she's known, who's also a contributor.
That's great.
We're excited about the contributors that we've got. You are our first cheese maker, but we have cheese mongers, we have all sorts of cheese experts, and right now it's mostly cheese writers, but I'm looking forward to getting more professionals really to contribute, much the way you'll find on Alcohol Professor.
Well, I sent you a few writers and I'll continue to do so. Not that you probably are getting inundated, but when I find people that are great to work with, I like to refer them within our circle. It's good for us all to work together.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited about your upcoming piece too.
Well, thank you. That was a good challenge. Thank you for having me write about myself. That's hard.
Writing really forces you to think about something in a way that you wouldn't normally think about it. It makes you step back, step closer, really ponder, and taking the time and really thinking about it, I think is such a good exercise for everybody.
It's one of the good things, the very few that have come out of COVID, is doing more writing. And it's been fun to write recipes and pairings and, you know, mocktails, cocktails. But thanks to you, I actually sit back and write about myself. That was a good challenge I hadn't had in a while. So it made me bring out this book that I worked on here, Amy, years
Ah,
ago with Juliet Harbutton. She would be a great contact for you, and I'm glad to connect you. She wrote the World Cheese Book, but I wrote the American USA cheese section for her with Richard, who owns a cheese shop in New Orleans. And so it was really a fun way to work on. And what she wanted was cheeses that you don't open a book and see every day. So it was fun to have different cheeses and pick cheeses that, you know, are from all around the country. And so one of my favorite was the Kentucky, the Brie. It's a raw milk brie cheese made in Kentucky. I hadn't thought about it in years. So kind of a fun resurfacing. And do you want to open up for some questions? I see a few questions have come up. Are you okay with questions?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So Karina will read out the questions for you or I to answer. Go ahead. I have mine already, but what's yours?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, the question is, what is your to-go cheese to carry with you when you're traveling?
Oh my goodness.
It's a good
Well,
one. I have mine.
it varies. It varies depending upon the length of the trip. I will admit to having taken Laughing Cow cheese because it is wrapped in foil, or the Mini Bell cheeses because
Yes.
they do have portability going for them. But typically I would say a cheddar is typically what I go for, both because I like it with crackers, I like it with fruit and nut mix, with an apple that I'll also sometimes take with me, and it's sturdy and it holds up pretty well. So I would say a cheddar tends to be what I take with me on trips,
Nice.
and I'm a big whenever I fly, I always pack my snacks ahead of time.
Yes, me too. Well, I always bring the dry jack, probably because I'm from Sonoma, and it's considered like every household in Sonoma has butter and dry jack on our tables. So, but dry jack, you can, here in Sonoma, you go in and they cryovac it in little pieces, and so you can toss
Nice.
it in your suitcase and it'll last weeks on the road. So I'm known to
Wow.
always have dry jack with me in my suitcase. And I remember when we were traveling with Mr. Gorger, and he's like, I know with you, like we got stuck in an airport. And I'm like, of course I do. Like, so dry jack is my go-to cheese on my travel. That's a good question though. That's a fun one.
I've
So
brought a lot of cheeses back with me on the plane from various places, and that's always a tricky endeavor, depending upon what the TSA says and how liquid your cheeses they feel are, and but I'll take any risk to get my cheeses back and fill up my suitcase. I'm thinking of trips to both France and to
for
Wisconsin,
sure.
where there was a lot of cheese going on.
I like that comparison, France and Wisconsin. I like that.
Yeah.
Cheesemakers in
Meccas
Wisconsin
of
would
cheese.
appreciate that.
If you've ever
Well,
been
last
to
week we had,
Wisconsin, their farmers market in Madison is one of the most incredible experiences. I mean, some of the most truly legendary, incredible cheesemakers of our era are just there selling their cheese,
yes,
and it's quite an experience for anyone who likes cheese.
it is for sure. That'll be one of the things that will change during COVID, sadly. But
Yes,
the Madison, Wisconsin Farmers Market is like the Plaza of Sonoma, and it only
yes.
goes one way. So you don't get a chance. If you missed it, you got to go back all the way around. It's really comical, if you would. And I worked at a stand once working with Andy Hatch at Uplands Cheese. And I've
Yeah.
never worked so hard at a farmer's market stand in my life. And I've worked markets for years. But man, we're talking cheese sales. Like
Oh,
people come up
yes.
and it was amazing. But it was really fun to work it with Andy. He'll be on the show and coming up in a few weeks, Andy Hatch from Uplands. We're going to
Yep.
talk about his different ages of his Pleasant Ridge Reserve. So that'll be fun. So I saw a
Nice.
question
Nice.
come in, Karina.
Yeah, so you can probably hear me now.
Yes.
What are your thoughts regarding merchandising and marketing cheese coming this holiday season? This is from Liz.
Mm, great question. Amy, you want to go on first on merchandising?
Well, I've been talking to Jen Jambroni, who is with the California Milk Advisory Board and is also on the board of the California Artisan Cheese Guild. And this is a really big issue. You know, sampling has definitely taken a hit. Both retail and restaurants where people sample cheeses and try them for the first time are really challenged right now. I think that actually had an interview, one of our maybe surprisingly, our most popular story thus far was an interview with Felice Thorpe, who is the president of the California Artisan Cheese Guild. She said she's been talking to retailers about and producers about having to invest in equipment to package smaller amounts of cheese. That really, you know, people are not going to invest in a very large piece of a cheese that's very expensive that they have not been able to try. So being able to offer smaller amounts, smaller selections, I think is going to be really crucial. That's what I've heard.
And I would agree with you. I was on a conference call last week with a group of California Cheese Guild members talking about exactly packaging more 8-ounce in specific weights. People are not likely to buy a 1 pound piece. They want a 4-ounce, 8-ounce. And last week, Sid Cook, who is Car Valley Cheese, he is now cut and wrapping for other cheesemakers in his region of Wisconsin because he did the investment of the equipment and not everyone can afford the investment of the equipment. So he's actually kind of co-oping, cutting and wrapping for his, you know, his area region of southern Wisconsin. And then I was talking to another cheesemaker who is also looking at investing in the equipment to do 4-ounce and 8-ounce pieces because exactly that reason. People are not going to be buying larger wedges. And also looking at more cheesemakers are going mail order in addition to their retailers.
Yes.
But direct mail order has really grown during this COVID time because cheesemakers can do a variety of sample pack. And if they like it, hopefully then they'll walk into a retailer and purchase that piece forward. That's my hope for these cheesemakers because I'm personally getting a lot of calls from the marketing end how to sell inventory currently. Cheesemakers are sitting on a lot of inventory and it hurts my heart when I hear how much they're sitting on and how are they going to be able to sell it.
Yeah, I think collaborations are key, and that's, you know, the collaborations that you're doing, the victory boxes, victory cheese. I think collaborations, I'm seeing a ton with wineries. You know, I went and bought veal from Rissotti Ranch, and, you know, who is her neighbor? Point Reyes. So I'm buying, you know, she's got chunks of cheese. She's got Babe Blue and Toma out there. She's collaborating with them, selling their products. I think those kinds of collaborations, whether they're very informal or formalized, are going to become more standard. And frankly, I think they're good for everybody. I think they're good for the retailers. I think they're good for the consumers. I think it's, again, one of those rare good things to come out of this whole experience.
It is. I mean, we're working with currently Valley Ford, and she cut wedges that she cuts them and wraps them so we don't have to handle it. So it's less handling of the product. And when she seals them, they have a longer shelf life for us. So we have the Valley Ford Highway 1, Estero Gold. We're doing some Vella cheeses, our cheeses, a Laura Chanel cheese, a Belfiore cheese. And it's better to be as a group. And because we're doing home delivery and a lot of our client base that we're delivering to every Wednesday and Thursday are definitely older. As Ben and I say, it's a lot of our friends' parents. We feel like we got a double duty here. We're delivering food and cheese, but we also feel like we're doing a well-being check on our friends' parents on a regular weekly basis now, which is an honor in a small town. But definitely the clients feel safer when we're delivering cheese that's been wrapped and cut, and they know that it came right from the farmer to us, to them, and it's less distribution, less handling. So I'm rather surprised the volume that we're actually going through with our locals, because they like ordering a piece of cheese they know that's been directly delivered to us.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it goes back to that, not wanting to limit contacts, point of contacts.
Yeah.
Um, we go to the store, we don't even think about how many times each package has been touched by somebody else. Now we think about those things.
Yes, it's true. And I'm working on this project for the Pacific Northwest, and it's so funny how we're so direct delivery in our own warehouse. I mean, we get our just about everything delivered directly to us from the producer, our tomatoes, our cheese, our meats, our charcuterie, everything. But then traveling up, Portland, Seattle, I'm amazed how many channels I have to go through from the producer to cross dock. And now with COVID, we're definitely using our HACCP recall plans to make sure we have every step lined up to make sure we're following all the protocol.
Yeah, that's something I think I need to add to my editorial calendar, is just how much people in the cheese industry are already up to speed when it comes to safety. This is an industry that could not exist without cleanliness, extreme cleanliness and safety. And, a lot of the procedures that other industries are having to get up to speed on are things that those in the cheese industry have long maintained.
Oh, they've already been set in stone. Where we make our cheese at Belfiore in Berkeley, when there was a milk recall last year in the state of California, so all cheesemakers had to halt just to not stop production. Well, yes, stop production, but just verify your milk source. And Lino was one of the first cheesemakers to be able to provide his HACCP recall plan. And so we were the first up and running plant again with just like minimal hurdle, because he's like, here it is. And that is one of the many reasons I like working with Lino, is because of the HACCP recall sanitation safety plan. And I mean, like my daughter and Ben have never even actually been in the cheese making room. They've been to the front office, but it's like, we call it the Willy Wonka. You can see it, but you can't go in.
Yeah.
Because of sanitation and safety.
Yeah. And the traceability too, just knowing where absolutely everything comes from when you're dealing with so few ingredients, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's some producers out there that are really leaders in the industry, Point Raised Blue being one of them. The Giacomini family has a fantastic protocol for their facility, and kudos to them, because not only were they able to do that, but also still invite guests on their premise, which is a huge hurdle, because they have the cooking center and the cooking classes all right with their production, which shows they must have a savvy plan in place.
Right.
Sure.
Quite an operation. Yeah.
Yeah. Those ladies do a great job with their father. So is there any other questions, Karina? Or I had a couple questions for Amy.
Yeah, there's a question here that's something people really enjoy about cheese shopping is learning and buying over the counter. Where do you suggest shopping to get quality cheeses and finding info about these cheeses when it's not face-to-face?
Good question.
Well,
you want to go first, Amy?
Sure. What I will recommend is newsletters. It's amazing to me how many great cheese shops have newsletters, how many folks in the industry. The Epicurean Connection has a great newsletter. Even if you're not shopping, you want to be reading that newsletter. I subscribe to a ton of newsletters just to pick up little tidbits about cheese, to learn things that I don't know. I know you had Gordon Edgar on recently talking about, and I asked about his newsletter, which I thoroughly enjoy and have been leaning on him to come and contribute to Cheese Professor, because there are people who have such an incredible wealth of knowledge. And I think even when you go into a store, what percentage of people are actually talking to the person behind the counter versus just picking something up? I think that the more opportunities to share information and get it out there, the better. And for me, newsletters are kind of the go-to.
I would agree. On a couple of the ones that stand out to me are Zingerman's. They do a great cheese newsletter every week. Murray's in New York City does a great weekly newsletter. And the one I really personally enjoy is Cheese Teak out of Virginia.
Ooh,
and
I don't know
she does
this
a great job. Cheese Teak, like boutique cheese teak.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've subscribed to hers for years because she has some really savvy cheese and wine pairings, cheese and spirits, beer. And she would probably be a great contributor for you. But I don't even actually know her, but I can tell you that I read her newsletter every week. because of the tips that she has. And it's not the same every week. Some weeks it's about what she's serving in her cafe. And I have to say, I've gotten inspirations from her, or pairings. You know, she did a really fun, like, cheese and chocolate, Halloween candy and cheese last year that I thought was hilarious. And so that's one. And then Antonelli's in Texas does a fantastic newsletter, Kendall and John. So it's fun to just think about the whole region that does these great cheese newsletters, if you would, you know, weekly emails. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to email me, and I can send you the list of the ones that I've subscribed to. And maybe, Amy, if you have any you like, I can add them to our YouTube notes, because
Yeah,
it's
that
always
would be
fun
great.
to link people to the broader education of cheese. And especially during COVID, when you can't taste a cheese, it's important for us to all share the good word of fellow cheesemakers around the country. You know, pre-COVID, we were about to go to Texas and make a cheese with Pure Luck goat cheese, Amelia Sweetheart, and we're going to eventually make a collaboration cheese. But she also does a great Facebook. She has so many beautiful pictures of her kids and the goats, and her husband's a brewer, so there's always lots of beer and cheese talk. She does a great one. So it's really fun to use that social media aspect, and the newsletter aspect are two facades that I see are very useful for consumers. And Karina?
Absolutely.
Liz says she loves the idea of lists and newsletters. A list of newsletters would be welcome.
Be glad to add them.
Yeah, the other question that was on deck is, we've heard about Cheese Professor. How did Cheese Professor start? And who are some of your featured writers? What are some popular topics?
Oh, good question, Amy.
Yeah, so like I was saying before, it was just basically a personal project from the publisher, who has an interest in cheese and wanted to see a site that would be educational and yet accessible. Our goal is really to be of interest to cheese enthusiasts, but also those in the trade. We're really trying to dig deeper with some of the stories, get some perspectives from people in the industry, just take on a very wide variety of topics. We publish 3 times a week, so we really have a ton of content, and I try not to make it be, you know, what you're getting everywhere else, and not boring, not too pedantic. So this, like I say, the site is a sister site to Alcohol Professor, and we have such a wide variety of topics. I think pairings, interviews are popular, lots of educational pieces, deep dives. I mean, I have a huge list of topics that I want to cover, that I want people to write about, just because I think they're just interesting to anybody who's interested in cheese. Some of the people we have, I'm really pleased to have as contributors. We have Alexandra Jones. We have Christine Clark. Christine Clark was with Murray Brothers. Alexandra Jones has done a lot with the Cheese Grotto and with De Bruno Brothers. So lots of good people.
De Bruno Brothers is another fantastic newsletter.
Yes, a great weekly newsletter. Yeah, for sure. And like I say, I plug for Rainbow Grocery. Their newsletter is fantastic. I mean, there's actually some really great cheesemongers who are writers. It's amazing to me how many have actually been journalists, came to cheese as a second or third career, and are just really great writers. And that comes across. And I think it's part of the success of those retailers as well. You know, they're able to really communicate so well about cheese, which is necessary. Not every, I would say not every industry does a good job with that. Cheese does a better job than most.
I would agree. I think a lot of these cheese shops really do a great newsletter. The Steve's Cheese Shop, the Cheese Bar up in Portland, he just put out a book last year on cheese and ciders. And so I thought today for you, Amy, since I know your sister page, I brought a dry jack, an apple cider caramel paired with a Gravenstein apple cider. So I take the Vela Dry Jack, and there's these apple cider caramels made in Sebastopol that have candy caps in them. And you pair the dry jack with a taste of the candy cap caramel with a sip of the apple cider, and it's a pairing in heaven. So you'll definitely have to try that.
yeah, that what grows together goes together, saying that people say with wine, I think certainly goes with cheese. When you think about where these cheeses are produced, where the milk comes from, and what else is in that environment agriculturally.
Well, these apple cider groves are right above the original Redwood Hill goat farm, so in the center of Gravenstein apple world. So, and we're coming upon Gravenstein apple season in the next couple weeks. And as you know, it's a very short-lived season, maybe 3 to 4 weeks maximum, but it's a hurry up and rush for cider producers, you know, and apple producers that use just the Gravenstein apples. So, and I love this time of year. If you get a chance to take a drive through Oxonville, Sebastopol, in the next few weeks, it'll actually smell the essence of apples, like we do in Sonoma. We get the essence of grapes during the harvest season. That whole valley, Green Valley, smells like apples during that season. So no wonder Jennifer Bice picked that area to have her beautiful goat farm.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I want to thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge and your expertise with us today. And if you wouldn't mind emailing me the links, I'll add those to our YouTube and our video site. And for all the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in today. And Amy Sherman, cheese professor, Sheana Davis, my husband Ben Sessions, and Karina Davis, thank you for joining us on Cheese Chat every Thursday. And starting in 2 weeks, we have 2 cheese chats every Thursday, one at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, because we're having so many requests from the cheesemakers that want to do a Zoom talk. So stay tuned, and they'll all be live on our website. And I'll put both your website, Amy, and ours up. So thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Amy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Karina, you want the dry jacket?